Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You get divorced. You get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter. Because as you know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. And I have no voice because I've been on divorce consults for nonstop for the last couple weeks. But that's okay because we have somebody here who has much more important things to say than me. So Lyerly, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lyerly Spongberg. I am a certified ADR divorce coach, a pre-mediation coach, a co-parenting specialist, and also a trauma-informed and coercive control-informed coach. It's a lot.
All the things, all the important things.
I'm a survivor of divorce.
Yes, and you have a blended family and you know all the things. You do so many things. So I think we chatted about this a while ago and we were like, this would be a great topic for an episode, is strategic empathy, right? When it comes to navigating your divorce, which is not a topic you don't usually hear about, the relationship between empathy and strategy and divorce. So what is this? Like, what is strategic empathy?
Well, it's a great question, and I think it's something that most people have never even heard of. So first, I want to start with defining the difference between empathy and sympathy, because I think those things get a little confused. Sympathy is really feeling for someone, like saying, like, I'm sorry. Like, you know what, Olivia, I'm sorry you lost your voice, Empathy is saying, God, you know what, I feel, that must really stink. You're doing all these things, and I'm sure that's really hard for you. So that the difference there is that, sympathy can create a little distance. It's like it's about you in a lot of ways.
Right.
And then empathy is really putting yourself in someone's shoes. Strategic empathy, sometimes called cognitive empathy, is consciously putting yourself in someone's shoes when you don't necessarily agree with someone, with the intention of minimizing conflict and keeping a conversation going. Does that make sense?
It does, but I would love some examples because I would love to learn how to use this.
Okay. So, strategic empathy is really the ability to acknowledge someone's fears, concerns, or needs around a specific topic. Like I said, even when you disagree, and that creates space or interrupts a pattern, usually a conflict pattern. It sounds like a good example is, say, co-parents have a schedule with their children and there's a conflict over a weekend. And say it's on mom's calendar that this is the time that, the children are with her. And dad comes, texts her and says, my friends gave me their ski house for the weekend. I really, I'm going to take the kids. It's a great opportunity.
Right.
Now, mom could say, are you out of your mind? Absolutely not. Right. And just you can see how that could get heated pretty quickly. Okay. So to interrupt that, strategic empathy is taking a pause and saying to myself, you know what, I bet he would really love to do that. That sounds like a great opportunity. How do I convey that I get how he feels without agreeing with him? So a strategic empathy response would look like something like, wow, that sounds like you're really excited about that and it'd be really fun for you to do with the kids. And then it can also set a boundary. I made plans already and unfortunately it's not going to work this weekend. So do you see how that can be received differently? It could open up a conversation as opposed to escalating a conflict.
Yes, I do. I wonder how that would come across, to the person because you're still saying no. You're just saying no in a different way.
Right. But you're right. And you're saying no. What it does is create, like, imagine you're hearing that, right? At least I'm not saying, no, are you out of your mind?
Right.
No effing way. No, and you can see how that, and then say the kids are in the backseat of the car. Now you've lost your emotions are hijacked. You're in this state that is dysregulated. And then maybe there's a solution. It opens up the opportunity for having a conversation. Wow, is there any chance that sounds like great. I'm sure the kids would love that. That's hopefully the next step.
Right.
Is there an opportunity for you to switch weekends, with your friend who said that you could rent that house? That's one example. There are
Okay.
many, as
You
you can
know,
imagine,
yeah,
divorce.
I'm thinking I think what I take away most from this, Lyerly, is that it gives you a second to pause, right? So
Yes.
it takes you a second to formulate that. I'm gonna just use an example from my own life that a couple years ago, my ex-husband was coming to town to see the kids, and my older son he used to get very car sick, right? And so
Yep.
my ex-husband emailed me and said, "I'm gonna pick up the boys, and we're gonna drive out to the Hamptons, and we're gonna go to a pumpkin picking." And I said, "While that sounds like a great idea, I don't know if you wanna clean up throw up in the back of the car, right? Is there something we can do closer?" And though he wasn't pleased with that answer, it did, I think, and we had a very high conflict divorce. I do think even that made him pause and think, "Oh, actually, you know what? Maybe she's right." And so I like that it's a disengagement from you and them, and it's more about the scenario.
Right. It's more about because there's these underlying fears or concerns. Because usually it's taking the time to listen to what's beneath the words or beneath the conflict.
Right.
And the trick is that people, I think, are worried about saying something like that because they think they're agreeing. You're not agreeing. You're not agreeing with him that it's a great idea to go and drive out to the Hamptons.
Right.
But you're phrasing in a way that acknowledges his feelings,
Right.
which is a way to decrease conflict. And on the mediation table, that's a huge tool, right?
Yeah.
Hey, it could be something like, a guy saying, well, I've made all the payments on the house, so I feel like you should have more of the equity.
Right.
Okay, you know, that's his position. We had a great talk about position and interest,
Mhm. Mhm.
previously on a podcast,
Yep.
and that could result very quickly in that mediation session shutting down
Right. Right.
because that would get someone really angry. And you could
Yeah.
take a pause and say, "Wow, you know what? I can see how you might feel that way. However,"
Right.
and then you can make a statement and keep the conversation moving forward.
Well, you could use this for work also, right?
You
Like,
can
you
use
could
it
use
for
this
anything.
for
I
anything.
use it all the time.
Yeah, 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 and it makes you sound really put together, right? And, like, you've taken a second to really think about what you're gonna say without coming off the cuff and, blowing up.
Right. Right. And
Yeah,
it gives you time to create that space between your reaction and your response. So we
right.
always want to respond and not react, especially in these really difficult conversation. As we know,
Yeah,
going through a divorce and getting to a settlement comes with so many big decisions, so many big fears. And learning this as a tool to keep conversation moving is, it's an ADR tool. It's a
mhm,
skill that I try to teach my clients to, as a go-to, especially in a heated moment.
yeah. I mean, what would you say to somebody though that was like, "Well, I don't wanna be nice, like, I don't wanna, like, come to the table." He hasn't been nice to me, right? I know he's gonna respond abusively,
Sure.
and with toxicity if no matter what I say. So what does it matter, right? What would you say to that?
I would say, well, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel after that conversation? So clearly, this is a great example, Olivia. So in that scenario, you're dealing with a pattern. You're dealing with a scenario that keeps repeating itself. So typically in that kind of, relationship, that personality is not going to change.
Right.
You've probably been butting heads against that and it is making you feel bad about yourself for a really, really long time. So my question to that client would be, what are you willing to do to change that? Are you willing to drop the rope? Are you willing to stop fighting? Are you willing to change your behavior so that you walk away feeling better about yourself?
Mm,
And that's ultimately what can happen. So he could come at you super hard and you can say, wow, I really would love to tell him to go jump off a bridge, but I'm going to try this and see what happens if I say, hey, I can understand why you might feel like that. Does
yeah.
not mean I'm agreeing with him. It does not, that those are not the same thing. It's
Mm,
just saying I can get to a place where I can understand how you could feel that way. I can validate your experience or your, your position in the situation.
right. Right.
And that alone can temper that conflict.
So what are some like key terms or phrases you could use here to kind of have in your arsenal as you go through these conversations?
A few that I love is sort of like it sounds like this really matters to you. That sounds like it's really important to you. I can understand how you could feel that way. There's just
Mhm.
um it's a way to just calm it down and just it's an acknowledgement. It's acknowledgement that creates this space.
Yeah. I
Um,
love that. I love that.
yeah, I mean it's not hard. It's hard to do in the moment. Another one is like I can hear you. I can hear you, right?
Mm,
I am listening. I am not fighting.
right.
Um, and that does just create a little opportunity for solution as opposed to anger and
Yeah,
combat.
you know where I actually use this most is when I am talking to people online and people disagree with me. And I'll say I do the same thing. I'll say, "I hear you, but that's not, right, what this was about, or that's not what I
Right.
agree with," or whatever. And I do this with my kids, I think, automatically, but we're so quick to jump to anger, right? Because 'Cause we're so triggered when it comes to our ex or, soon to be ex.
And the truth is that in these difficult conversations with our ex, be it a text message or an email or conversation with mediation, or you get a response, a request from an attorney, you have been fighting for so long. You do have these entrenched, positions and behavior patterns. And it takes one person to change it. And, you never know. Maybe if you acknowledge that and maybe your next interaction with your husband was different,
Right.
based on you being like, hey, you know what? Um, I'm not sure you want to clean up the rope in the car.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
maybe that made you both laugh. And
Right.
maybe it created, it started to chip away at that pattern.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, when you're going through a conversation like that, well, it could be either parent, could be whoever you're talking to, doesn't see or foresee all of the things that could happen, right? And so that's one of the frustrations I know from talking to a lot of moms, right? It's like, well, the kids are going to go to the dad's for the weekend. They're going to eat ice cream and then they're gonna get diarrhea or, whatever it is, and it's
Whatever it
like
is.
and so the frustration lies in the why don't they see this before I mention this? But I like how you're strategically, right, like creating this narrative of talking about these things, which means something to you too, but being empathetic. So it sounds like it's caring about them, even though you don't, maybe.
Yeah, it's a delivery system in a
Right.
way,
Oh, I
right?
love
It's
that.
like a
Yeah.
spoonful of sugar, right?
Mhm,
Go back to
mhm.
your topic. It's a spoonful of sugar, it makes the medicine go down,
I love
right? So
that.
you have your spoonful of sugar, and then you set your boundary. But it eases the conversation.
So, I mean, I don't know if there's an answer to this, but if let's say you're at mediation and you're going through this or dealing and you're in court or whatever it is, I'm assuming it looks better to everybody to be the one that responds that way.
Yeah, and not only that, think about it. It also anytime you're able to demonstrate that command over your own emotions, it's a muscle. You're teaching yourself that you don't have to react. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, and you get more of a pause, and then you have less reactivity to the trigger.
Mm,
So all of these things end up, it might seem like a really small thing, but if you do it on a daily basis, or you do it, I mean, it can be, the simple thing we talk about. If you're stuck in traffic and you get super, pissed off because somebody cuts you off, you can think of, instead of reacting, you can say, you know what, he might have just found some really bad news and he's freaking out, or his,
right.
who knows what happened. He might have gotten a phone call from somebody. He might be late somewhere. And just that ability to strategically empathize with someone else in any given situation helps you stay more in control of your own emotions.
Yeah. So, how do you help people do this with your clients? Because if somebody's listening to this and they're like, "Lyerly, I love this. There's no fucking way I'm ever gonna do this." How do you work with your clients to teach them how to handle situations like this?
It's a great question, and I think we did it just a little bit ago when you were able to recall your own
Mhm.
scenario, right? So it can be a reality testing thing. It's a tool I can tell people about. It's really nonviolent communication and based in conflict resolution. So it's a tool that I can teach them, and then we can play it out. So if you wrote this text message that said, go jump off a bridge, there's no way. How do you think that, how are you going to feel? You might feel better for 20 seconds, or 2 seconds. But then how are you going to feel when you get the reaction you're going to get back?
Right.
Yes, it's going to, reassure you that this person is still this person, but how do you feel? And what would you feel like if you changed your strategy here? Again, strategic, changed your strategy and you got a different outcome. Now, how would you feel then? How would you feel in your body? How
Right.
would you feel about the conversation? How would you feel if you got a response back that wasn't the one you're used to? It might feel great.
Yeah.
So is it worth a try?
Yeah. And like you said, it may open up dialogue for a new kind of relationship that you have with this person. It's not always
Right.
the same pattern. So what do you do, like, as a divorce coach, if somebody's listening, like, what kind of work do you do with people? Where can people work with you? How can they work with you? All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. Yeah, you can find me at Step Up with Lyerly. I am also _with Lyerly on Instagram. I try to put a lot of
Yes.
helpful, useful content out there. I have a blog as well, and I work with people through all stages of divorce. Really, wherever they're finding themselves, if they're questioning if they want to get divorced, if they're trying to come up, determine that, or if they don't know what to expect. I can certainly help them with understanding the sort of the ABCs of how that works. I also help clients find experts, find the right people for their team,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully encourage them if I get them at the beginning not to hire the big bad attorney right away and set a really combative tone.
Yeah.
And then of course post divorce, working with how to communicate effectively with co-parents, and how do you transition into your family 2.0 version.
So much good stuff. We appreciate you so much. Well, you can definitely find Lyerly over at Fresh Starts. Also, this is definitely a conversation I would love to keep having about communication, because it's all about adjusting the communication. It's so hard to go from, like, this person was my husband or wife or, partner, lover, to, like,
Mhm.
I am strategically communicating with this person, right? It's really difficult, but it can be done. And it's just kind of rewiring, right, your whole system to figure that out. But you do need support. So Lyerly is there for that. Lyerly, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Olivia. Great to be here.
Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.